to have the wisdom of heaven, which is of God, or you're going to have the wisdom of earth, which is of Satan. And regardless of how much you try to balance it out, you're thinking one way or the other. And here's the fact. God and the world are so different, you can't think like both. You got to choose. Because God is so much more holy than the world. And the world is so disgustingly sinful. You can't associate the two. But here's what James says. James chapter 3, verse 13 through 18. Who is wise and understanding among you? Let him show it by his good deeds. By deeds done in humility that come from wisdom. But if you harbor bitter envy and selfish ambition in your hearts, do not boast about it or deny the truth. Such wisdom does not come from heaven, but is earthly, unspiritual, and of the devil. For where you have envy and self-ambition, there you find disorder and every evil practice. But the wisdom that comes from heaven is first of all pure, then peace-loving, considerate, submissive, full of mercy and good, impartial and sincere. Peacemakers who sow in peace raise a harvest of righteousness. Do you see the two kinds of wisdom? One is completely perfect and great and good and moral and of God. And then the other one is envy and selfish ambition, which leads to every kind of evil and disorder. You see, disorder is mentioned because it goes against the very nature of self-control. Because an envious and selfish ambition person will forsake self-control and they will do whatever it takes to fulfill what they want. How is your thinking? Is your thinking of God and of heaven and of heavenly things? Is that the consumption of our minds? Or is it we're focused on the things of this earth? Because how you think is not just going to affect how you're living on earth. It's going to affect your eternity. It's going to affect whether or not you glorify God. It's going to affect whether or not you grow spiritually. And I don't want us to just say we believe in God. We all believe in God. That's a given. We're all here. Most people believe in God, even though they don't live for Him. But we want to be ones that say we think like God. And you know what? My good thinking is demonstrated in my good life. Deeds done in humility, which comes from wisdom. And wisdom always emits the concept of self-control. And we have also understand as Christians, we have been called to change the way that we think. If we're controlled by our thinking, we have to change the way we think. Colossians 3, 1 through 4 says, since then you have been raised with Christ. Set your hearts on things above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. Set your mind on things above, not on earthly things. For you died, and your life is now hidden with Christ in God. When Christ, who is your life, appears, then you will also appear with Him in glory. See, we want to appear with God in glory. But we understand that's only going to happen if our hearts and our minds are set on things above. Because you cannot glorify God. You cannot serve God. You cannot truly love God. You can't obey the greatest commandment if you do not put your mind on things above. Because you're going to waste your time too much on the things of this world. What good is that? That's all going to burn up. You're going to die. Someone else is going to inherit it. Doesn't matter. There's always going to be something that's going to want us to give ourselves to the earthly things, but we want to give ourselves to heavenly things. We are to think about what Paul says in Philippians 4, 8 through 9. Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Whatever you have learned or received or heard from me, put it into practice, and the God of peace will be with you. Are you at peace right now based on how you're thinking? And is your thinking of the things of God? As Christians, we can't say, I follow God, but still think like the world. This is why I say, if we really change the way we thought and think, the way we live our lives would be completely different. Our priorities, our worldviews, our desires, they'd all be different. So let me ask you again, what do you spend the bulk of your time thinking about? Because if it's not the things of God, then we need to start disciplining ourselves to train our thinking. Otherwise, if you don't think, guess what? Someone will do the thinking for you. Isn't that true? That's why people without common sense will do what lemmings do. And like I was taught from my parents, don't be a lemming. Because even though that may be the majority thinking, you're going to fall off a cliff and die. Someone will always do the thinking whether it's you or someone else. But we choose to follow God who leads us to heaven, not following Satan in the world, which leads us off a cliff, metaphorically speaking. So the second thing that we need to grow in is self-control in your desires. What do you desire? I mean, I want you to be really humble here, because a lot of times we can say, I want to follow Jesus. That's my desire. Is that really? Is it really the desire of our hearts? And I really want us to impress on this, because you can know the affections and the intent and the purpose of a person by simply looking at a person's life, their deeds, their words, their actions, the sincerity of their hearts. What do you desire? What if I said you could have anything or do anything, what would they really be? You know, I'm not saying say churchy answers, because a lot of times we would say that, but in our hearts we'd say, I wish I had that nice car. I wish I had that handsome man. I wish I had more money. I wish I was as popular as Taylor Swift. You know, we can say all those different things, because a lot of times those are honestly the things on our hearts. What do you desire? Because we can see, I know what you desire, because that's how you're living your life. That's what you're pursuing. That's what you're working diligently for. That's what you're prioritizing your time and attention to. We can understand what is the desire of your heart. The Bible makes known that sin actually comes from the desires from you. That's where sin originates. That's why the Bible talks about sin in the context of it's the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. It's saying you want these things. You desire sin more than holiness and God. But this is where we start changing to be like God. When our desires are the things that God desires, that's when holiness comes about. You know, when we say, I would rather have this person saved than having what I want, I'm thinking more like God. When I am encouraging and desiring to build up that person rather than focusing on my own pride, I'm desiring like God. And this is ultimately why our Christian life should ultimately be about desiring God. Because when you desire God, the way that you live your life is going to be completely different than you would ever imagine. Completely different from today. How you use your time, priorities, your resources, whatever it may be. And people are going to think you're cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Because the world does not think like God. They don't desire the things of God. They say, you know what? Build up the most toys and die, and then leave it to someone who is ungrateful. That's what the philosophy of the world is. But we want to desire the things of God. We desire heaven. Most people don't want heaven. We want to desire God. Most people don't want God. We desire holiness. People definitely don't want holiness. This is where desire changes. You know, and people desire things. You know, that's why people steal, isn't it? Because they desire that rather than upholding the law. Or they want to desire to be liked, so they'll lie about who they are. Or they'll want a certain job promotion, and so they'll do something unethical. Or they'll covet something and just be incredibly jealous of their friend. Whatever it may be. Desire is where the origin of sin comes in. This is the whole idea of addiction, like I mentioned earlier. It's saying, I want this more than fill in the blank. And anytime we desire something more than God and His will, we got it wrong. You can know if someone's desire is truly for God. It doesn't take much work. It doesn't take much work if we're honest with our own lives to say, I truly desire God. Because my words reflect it, my actions reflect it, everything about me reflects it. But here's the amazing thing. When we start thinking like God, we're going to want the things of this world less. And in fact, we're going to want God more. We're going to want things more. We're saying, God, I want things to be different and changed. I would rather have these people who are in human trafficking in Africa to come to the gospel more than that mocha. Or God, I want this person to be well fed and encouraged rather than just buying another thing that'll be garage sale fodder next summer. I mean, when we change the way we think, and when we desire the things of God, it's all right a lot of times to indulge more so in them. You know, when you indulge in the things of the world, oftentimes it'll get you in trouble. But when you indulge in the things of God, a lot of the times, God will say, yeah,